guys, greetings and welcome to today's Newport's Life TV show. I'm your host, Gordon Weinberger, and here we are at the 959 Studios in Newport, New Hampshire. It's a glorious day, a glorious winter day, and we are so excited to have you today in our community and on our show. Our guest today is Johndrow, publisher of the Compass newspaper, and Newport's Life TV show starts right now. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Thanks.
I'm glad you could come on board, Lee, today.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thanks
So
for having me on.
you're doing some remarkable stuff right here in Newport, and you're doing it with the published word. And what I love about it most is you're doing it for free. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the paper itself started about 3 years ago when we had this empty space for printed works and things like that. There was a whole group of papers that came into the area, and I had started a paper called the Weekly Clarion, and then as papers returned and other people were weaned out, what we began to do, we looked at each other and we said one day, let's merge our forces. So that's what we did 2 years ago.
And that became, out of that came the Compass newspaper.
The Compass was already there, so I merged the Weekly Clarion and we made it one paper at that time.
Was the Clarion free as well?
The Clarion was free,
Oh,
and
wow.
we went both sides of the river as well, same way we do with the Compass.
So hitting sort of the Newport, Sunapee side, and then the
Yep.
Claremont all the way over to Windsor and that whole
we went
area.
Windsor, Springfield, Bellows Falls, Ludlow,
Right.
about that way.
So
they were
you're
cool.
you're publisher of the local Compass free newspaper, which I love because you're getting free, wonderful information. And I think in this economy, that really is remarkable. And I wanted to ask you, for our viewers especially, a little bit about your background as publisher. Have you always had a love of the written word? Is that your background? And did you grow up here, really watching the English language? 'Cause
Well,
obviously you have a love for it.
My mom was an English teacher.
There we go.
My grandfather was a publisher back in the 1920s. And things
Newspapers?
it was newspaper.
Wow.
And through a series of events and things, about 10 years ago, a friend of mine had a paper, and he was going through some difficulties, and I became a good friend of mine. So anyways, I came alongside of him, and 2 years later, we decided to sell it. And so
Was that over the river in Vermont?
It was
in
Vermont.
the
We
Claremont?
were actually out of Charlestown at the time,
Okay.
and I now own that paper, though we don't publish that. It was called the Valley Photo Fides.
Valley Photo Fides. Was it
Right.
like a
It
classified
was a
with
classified
photos?
with photos. That's what it was.
All right, cool.
And so that's what we did. And so anyways, we had that void, and then a few years later, I just felt like there was an opportunity. We were republishing the Valley Photo Fides,
Right.
and then we had the fact that there was no real newspaper out there for that season back in that difficult time in that summer.
Nice.
And so anyways, that's when we began. And I started the Clarion, so we had both until the merge time. But as far as historically, always been a reader, enjoy news.
Love that stuff.
Yeah, not a big writer, but I love all the other stuff. So,
Yep.
this just became an opportunity. So once we sat down, we had writers in place. We had Ann Stout from Newport and
Sure.
people like that, and it was already, all the people were already in place. So what we just needed to do was just bring it into line.
Just organize it. So are you from this area? Because clearly you have a passion for the area.
I
you
love
guys
this
can-
area. I was born and raised in Connecticut.
Okay.
And I moved
Me
up.
too.
Yeah, I was born there,
Yeah.
and I moved up here when I was 16. My
Nice.
parents decided to follow the dream of own a Vermont business, and so we all moved up to
Here
Vermont.
we are to the valley. Coming
That's
up to
how
the
I got
valley.
there, and-
That's cool.
And the irony of it all is, of course, is that I've lived here since then, but now my daughter lives in Connecticut. She lives like one town
Wow.
from where I was and things like
Wow.
that. So.
That's great. Well, you guys, if you haven't had a chance to read the free Compass newspaper, it's remarkable. It's a color newspaper. Our show has information on it every
Yep.
week, so you can learn about the show. And when you open it up, I got to tell you, there's so much neat stuff from Ann Stout, who
We love her.
is a real Newporter. I mean,
Yep.
her family. She writes the Newport Notebook, guys, and has people, places, and happenings every single week. This
That's
comes
it.
out every Thursday, and you know it's a hot paper because there'll be a stack in the local gas stations.
Yeah.
We can name all the places later, but T-Birds, and you've got it all
Yeah,
over
we
the
have it
place.
in Shaw's over there.
Jiffy,
things
Shaw's.
Like that.
And I'll tell you, within a day or two, Lee, they're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody gets there, and you've got everything for the weekend, the pet of the week. But I love,
Yeah,
you
that's
have a wonderful column also. And I love the way that you capture all the wonderful things that are happening in town.
Thanks.
Not just in Newport, but also the surrounding towns as well. And that's
Yep.
obviously part of your vision.
Well, my vision is to see people and community grow. I want to see the community be successful, whether it's my specific community. I happen to live in Springfield, Vermont, but Claremont, whatever it is. So I work with a lot of businesses with the purpose to see them get better. That's the plan and the purpose behind it, is to see communities get better, and one person at a time kind of thought process that we try to help one person. So
I think the other thing that our viewers should know that I love about this paper as publisher, you're completely hands-on. You're a local guy, meaning you're in these communities. You're here today in the studio, but I could see you in downtown Newport one day. I mean, you're making the rounds. You're always in the car. So you're really that entrepreneurial. I would call it an entrepreneurial publisher, for lack of a better term.
I like it because I get to meet people. I mean, if there was, my wife would tell you, if I could get paid just to meet people, that's what I would do.
Yeah, it'd be your love.
So because of what we do, we get invites to theater groups and things like that. We get invites to chambers of commerce, for instance. We'll be in meetings like that. And, we try to pick through the things we're going to do with it and stuff.
Nice.
And so
tell me about Newport, and that's something that you're really covering often. And that means that we're really sharing Newport, guys, with the other communities on the other side of the river. We get to learn about them, but there's since we're in Newport, we're really sharing what's going on, and you're covering that week in and week out, wonderful stuff and positive stuff.
Thank you. That's one of the hardest things to do, even in what we do, because we're a weekly paper, as opposed to being a daily paper. Daily papers have the option of being able to do news.
Sure.
So when we do news, for those of you who might not know, we have a website called compasspaper.com, and we post area news, like something that's going on, those kind of things. But when it comes down to what we're doing in Newport, for instance, we take a lot of our information that comes in from Newport, like things like when you have Winter Carnival and those kind of things. So those things come up. We take those things, and we may or may not run a separate article on that, but at the same time, we hand it off to Ann, who's our writer over there, and she'll take events and things like that, put those in place. So she'll get the library events, but if we think it's a really cool library event and we have space, we'll incorporate that Newport library event, or that Newport type of event that's going on.
And you really do that with zeal, because when you really look at the paper, it's in color, which makes it so nice. And in this day and age, you think about newspapers probably more going under than they are really
another big
flourishing, right?
right?
And you guys are really flourishing, and I think that is the remarkable thing about it. And it's got to be because of the color. I mean, today, this week, a beautiful photo right there of a baby.
Yeah,
and that's a woman's hand. It's just,
and we owe a lot of that to our designer. I mean, people send us in these cool photos and things like that, but we have a great designer who actually lives in Putney. So, when you were talking about being in the car, when I leave here, I'm going to be reviewing pages on my cell phone.
Not driving, you'll pull over.
No, but I'm saying I'll be reviewing a page on the cell phone,
sure.
and we have a column coming in that we've been waiting for, and that'll go through the internet and things like that. So,
nice.
Ironically, we probably only see each other like every 2 weeks or something like that, because of the way things are.
So you've done some remarkable things. A free local newspaper covering not just our town of Newport, but also the surrounding town. So if you want to go to a movie, or if you, like you said, you want to go to the show or an opera,
we put a lot of that
you
stuff
can drive 20 miles or 28 miles, and you can be right in Windsor, and you can see what they have going on there. It's in color, which I think is just beautiful. But again, back to the fact that the information is all free, and I think in this economy, you've taken not only a wonderful risk on these communities, but the communities have given back because they really support this stuff, don't they?
Right. People, and everybody asks who reads our paper. Well, we know thousands and thousands and thousands of papers get picked up every week.
I see it.
But what happens is, the unique thing about a free weekly paper that's picked up in a community store or restaurant or things like that, is they estimate that 2.6 to 4.3 people will read that single paper. So instead of having it mailed to someone's home, if they go down to Shaw's or to the local grocery store and they pick it up, they'll take it home. It'll be family read on a lot of things, because it has things, sports about children and things like that.
Is that any newspaper, Lee, or is that a free?
No, there's three categories, so to speak. You have a daily / or paid newspaper, and then you have a category that's a weekly paper that's mailed into homes. And then you have papers like ours, which are picked up. So we're not forced to pay the mailing costs and things like that. We're not charging to have that information.
Wow.
So
you're really relying on that storekeeper, that restaurant keeper, the gas station to put them out, make sure they're nice and neat.
to make sure they're displayed and stay that way.
Nice.
And so then the other part of it is, so much information gets mailed out every nonprofit, every business, they have business news and things, so-and-so is getting promoted.
Right.
We want to take as much of that into place, but when you print a paper, the costs are severely different than putting it on the web. So what we've had to tell people is we'll do everything we can to get your press release in, but rather than just edit it and take out a bunch of stuff, we'll make it available on the web.
Right. So now you've got that dual.
So people
place.
can read and so many things.
So you get it for free right on the newspaper
Right.
stands, but you get it for free right at, what is it, the Compass?
Compasspaper.com.
Compasspaper.com?
Yeah. So
Okay,
we'll
great.
I load up an average of 125 additional stories on a weekly basis
nice.
that don't appear in print.
Nice.
So, if something comes in, like our paper prints on Thursday, but there's an event that somebody is doing in Newport at the library or
Right.
downtown, and they get it to us, we'll make sure it's available online, and that gives us a whole other world of
That's
viewers.
great.
and
So you're
things.
getting local people coming to that as well. Is that,
Well,
you get a lot of hits, a lot of traffic?
We get a lot of traffic.
Nice.
What we find is we have people that have left communities like Newport or Claremont and things, and they want to know what's going
Right,
on. They're
stay
coming
connected.
Back, they're coming back into the area,
Wow.
and they're interested in what's going on. Like is there a winter carnival when I'm going to be on
Sure,
vacation,
sure,
that kind of thing. So that's what we find happening with
That's
that.
beautiful.
Yeah, we think so.
let me ask you, if there's so many weekly, what do you call them, columns in here. I get to read this every
Yeah,
week, so
there's
I
about
really enjoy it.
15 average.
I'm going to go to it now. Tell me what one of your favorite. Oh, by the way, this week, and I know you have it every week.
Newport Senior
beautiful,
Center.
Newport Senior
Yeah.
Center News. You got all the news about what's going on and what they're doing. They always have a show, or you can go over for lunch. Today you've got Erna McCormick and you've got Alice Roberts in there and their photos. So really, right in our best. Like I said.
Well, that's what we get. Our writer over there, Belinda, she sends us, and a lot of people who grew up on print, moving into their older ages and things, they're really interested in what's going on. So we have 3 senior columns that we actually do. We do one from Charlestown, we do one from Springfield, and of course.
Yeah, I pay attention to the one in Charlestown too because I enjoy that as well. But like I said, I think you've done such a great job of laying out what's fun. You got stuff about pets.
Yeah.
But what would you think? Apple crisp pancake, by the way, is the recipe of the week.
That's Kathy Buck.
Yeah, she's in there. And it's the same people writing their articles. They're all locals.
Yeah. What we find is our community columnists, like Ann, has been writing for the Compass for almost 3 years now. We have another person who writes. I can't pick. It would be unfair of me to try and pick what I like because I have a woman over here, Dee Courier, sends me things like that. I have another woman who lives here in Newport.
You like them all.
Well, what they do is they said, I always like to write. I could do 100 words a week. Do you mind? And if we can find the fit for it.
For our viewers, what's 100 words look like? Is that a couple paragraphs?
Probably about 3 column inches, 3 wide.
Okay.
Somewhere in that
you're
neighborhood.
writing about this much.
Yeah,
that
I'm
fits.
the wordy guy. Most
Okay.
everybody else tries to stick around 300.
I love your section. You've got this. I mean, and it just goes to show what a passion you have, Lee, for this newspaper. It's called Compass Points, and it's really your perspective on what's going on that week.
Right.
Sometimes you could have had a fire at your house, or the roof caved
That's
in,
it.
or you fell off the
Fell
roof.
off the roof, ended up in the hospital. Yeah,
But
we've been there.
every week, you're so honest about you're sharing your life, you're sharing your passions about this newspaper and what's going on in our community. I've seen stuff in there from tsunamis that have affected the world, or a earthquake, hurricane, and you've given your perspective, but somehow you've tied it into what's going on here local.
Right, like for instance, and the one I wrote yesterday, there was a circumstance that was coming up and people were back and forth on a blog, and I didn't like where it was headed, to be honest with you. I looked at that and I said, people are trying to work out what's in their life on this blog, and it doesn't make sense, because you got to have a dialogue. You got to sit down with somebody and have a conversation. You and I may not agree, but we're willing to come to that place, not to agree to disagree, but agree to come to a place with respect. And so that's what I wrote.
What are you saying? Blog doesn't allow for that?
Well, what happens is you have people. We're so tuned into Facebook and Twitter, and I'm not demeaning those. Those are things that we use. But when you only have 140 characters, it's pretty hard to say, "Hey, Gordon, I really like you, and it was a really good job." But this idea, you can't get it. You're stuck with, "Hey, Gordon, I like you." and so if somebody looks at that, they misinterpret where you want to go with the conversation. Right. So I just think that one of the things I would like to see is not that we work out our stuff in print or things like that, but we actually get our communities to come together in a positive motion. You know, we're moving towards the answer. We agree that there's difficulties and problems, but we want to move towards the answer.
I want to stop you on that point, Lee. And by the way, if you're just joining us, guys, Lee Johndrow, publisher of our local and free Compass newspapers, with me today. We're in the 959 studios on John Stark Highway. This is Life Show, and we're so excited to have you on board today.
I appreciate it.
I think if you take a look at this newspaper and what you've done for the communities and your love for it, again, you brought up a word, and it's a word you guys know that I absolutely love, that word positive. I don't see a lot about the drug bust. I don't see a lot about the husband and wife that got into a fight or the guy that was arrested. You've got the positive, incredible stuff that's going on, the arts and entertainment, what's going on in the communities that's positive. That's unusual in this day and age, especially while newspapers, I understand that newspapers sell what's negative. And
I
you've
think
really
that's a part.
turned that on the
You're trying to figure out, you got to figure out things like where does your dollar come from, you know, and things like that. Once I resolved in my mind, it doesn't matter how that works, the rest of it falls into place. That when you look at a community and you say, these are the difficulties we've had, but we don't stop here, and we begin to move ahead. We've had difficulties.
Right.
You know, you mentioned me falling off the roof. That was a difficulty.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, you don't stop when you're laying on the ground. You get up and you pick yourself up, and you somehow get yourself to where you need to be because your wife's saying, "Emergency room, honey." But the point is that you can bring about those things. It's not that the difficult things don't get talked about. But how do you discuss the difficult things when it's slanted or it's one-sided? You can sit there and try to get the dialogue, but you can't usually get it into place because how you say something and how I say something, we may mean the same thing, but we don't sound like we're saying the same thing.
So would you say that your writers in writing the material, obviously they're covering the stuff that's going on. You've got financial news, you've got the arts, so you're hitting all the pillars of our communities.
Right.
But would you say that they're looking at things from a different angle that you might not normally see in a
I think
free
so.
weekly?
I think so. I mean, you know, Anne in Newport, she loves her community. She's a Newport girl, and I don't mean girl in a derogatory term. She's just been there all her life, and she, you know, she has her family there, and she has her friends there, and that's who she is. So she wants to see Newport be what it can be. Were there difficulties in Newport? Of course. But how we work out those things, we don't work those things out in print by, you know, or blogs or whatever. We don't say, this is crazy, why are we doing it this way? We have to say, that was a difficult time, or even that was a crazy time, but the end result is we come back to the table and say, we need to find a solution.
I like that. Way more positive.
So that's what we do. We find our people do that.
She's always on page 4 if people want to read, or does it move around?
Yeah, it depends on how many pages the paper is. So, you know, you know, right now she's on page 4, and you know, she'll be there until we make some different.
I see her piece in there. It's 3 columns, guys, sometimes a little more. It's called Newport Notebook, People, Places, and Happening, and she really covers week in and week out what's happening in town. But like you said, a real perspective of positivity on Newport.
Right. She loves the place.
Loves the place,
and
like we all do.
And, you know, and we're not Pollyanna about it. We just simply recognize that, you know, there's things we need to work on. But until the community embraces that we collectively need to come together, those are the difficult things. And that's part of what I'm trying to do with the paper, is get people to look at life and say, I can only do X, but my X counts towards the whole process.
Well, I like you've got also all kinds of information. You've got perspective from various politicians. You've got, and it seems like you take a fair and balanced approach to everything you're doing.
I get accused of things sometimes, but I work really hard to say I listen to both sides.
It's got to be tough to be a newspaper publisher in this day and age. I mean, I saw the debate the other night with the Republicans going back and forth with each other. I mean, they spend less time talking about the detail of our daily lives right here in Newport, and more about fighting about who made more money and who paid taxes and did. And I'm thinking, you're covering the real stuff right here.
And that's the detail, because at the end of the day, we all have to go home. We all have to come back to where we live.
Right.
You know, I can drive around all day long, be in Newport, Claremont, and things, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be sitting back home with my wife, looking across the table and saying, we're okay.
Right. And that's going to be right here in your community. I think that's the biggest part of it, is that you're going to be able to see that right in your community day in and day out, and those
Right.
are the people you're going to see. So
That's
you can't really be too mean to them.
And that's certainly one of the things that I always say is you got to be effective with who you are, and you can't afford to alienate people, because the very
Right.
person you might alienate is the person that can come to your rescue
Right.
somewhere down the road.
Right.
We saw that when communities went through all the Irene, storm stuff and things like that. You mentioned houses burning. People flow to that.
Sure,
We can't
sure.
afford to alienate people.
Yeah, I really love what you're doing with the
Thanks.
newspaper, bringing people together in our community. And so on year 3, this has been 3 years of offering the free
Yep.
local paper. Let's go through some of the places in Newport that you can find it off the top of your head, and I'll help you from the ones that I know.
Okay.
T-Bird, Jiffy Mart, the pub. You can get it at the pub,
Shaw's,
I think.
the
Shaw's,
pizza places. There's 2 or 3 pizza
Yep.
places. One's in the plaza.
Village, Plaza,
Plaza.
and what else?
And then we
Laundromat. I think you can get it at the
we
laundromat.
put them in the laundromat over there
Yeah.
because they called us and said, we love your paper. We
Nice.
want to have your paper there.
Nice.
We also are in. We mentioned Shaw's earlier.
Malik's. Can you get it over at Malik's gas station?
We're in there, I think.
Yeah.
I believe we are.
Right
in
at the
there.
road-
I
sort
could
of
be
at the
wrong. I know
road ring.
exactly where it is because
Yeah,
I went in
next
and
to
met the
Town Hall.
gentleman.
Good.
I walked into
Malik and
introduce myself.
Sean.
Yeah.
That's
So
great.
I went
Good.
in there and I.
You can get it
Donnie-
over at Donnie T's.
Yeah, we're out there.
Yeah, good.
And then there may be a couple of other people because we find what happens is people say, well, I go to this hairdresser and I can never find your paper, and I'm going, we don't deliver to a hairdresser. But what I find out is somebody will go to like Hannaford's or Shaw's or something like that, and they'll take 5 or 10 to bring
Sure,
them back
sure,
to,
sure.
to their place of business. So
That's what I do when I'm in meetings. I
Yeah.
do I do this every
Yeah.
week. I'll grab a handful from the T-Bird as I come into town, or if I'm on the other side of town, I'll go into Shaw's.
Right.
And then I bring them to Revite, Rotary. I just love, it's free.
Thanks.
So why would you not,
Well, we
why
found
would
that
you
out
not
one
share
day.
it with everybody? Should read this paper.
Somebody said to me, we saw your paper up in Dartmouth. And I went, how did we get to Dartmouth? And I called my drivers, and they said, are you delivering to Dartmouth, the hospital, and I don't know about this? I go, no, somebody comes in and grabs them.
Grabs
They
them.
come up there, and they put them in the waiting room. Okay,
It's
so
fabulous.
that's
And I think, again, I want to really praise you. It's so laudable that you not only taken the risk to offer this to our communities,
Thanks.
sharing our community with others and other communities with us here in
Yeah.
Newport, but also that, again, you have it in color, tons of pictures. It's
Yeah,
interactive.
we like pictures.
You've got the online part, which you said was Compass Papers.
CompassPaper.com.
Compass Paper.
Yep,
.com.
and like I say, there's hundreds
Check
of
that
new
out.
press releases that are there and things like that. And there's also the other things that are offered there too. So,
Yeah, I just absolutely love it. Sports, we got sports. We talk
Joe
about
Milliken.
politics.
yep, I think we cover the gamut pretty much. Except
Really good.
except we'll always get that letter saying you need to do more news. Well, we can't do more news
Right.
because by the time we get it, it's already passé.
See, now that's an interesting point. When you're doing a weekly newspaper, you're going to have information and you're going to have news,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not going to be that that news that happened in that day or within a
not the
24 hour.
day-to-day thing.
I mean, well, even the national news.
It's changing. I mean,
They-
everybody, most people go to their cell phone or to the internet to get their daily
Get
news.
that right.
And so the emphasis changes. And we've looked. We had a meeting with some people that are, ex-editors and ex-publishers to see
Sure.
if there's something we can do. And we want people to know we are looking at that. But it's so difficult to
It's
really
so
accomplish it.
Well, you find like even the CNNs of the world. I mean, they talk about the cruise ship that sank
Right.
back a few weeks ago. It's the same
I was
regurgitated
gonna say
information,
over and
24,
over
20.
and over again.
So a week, that's
Yeah.
so much time. You really can't regurgitate that information that
And
that
that-
long. It'll
and-
stale.
And I would be lying to you to say that's probably the hardest thing to do is to look at all these
Oh,
things
yeah.
that come in, knowing that we have a financial governor, meaning there has to be finances to match what we
Sure,
do on the other
sure.
side. And things like that, and to try to make those decisions. So we try to, like when the Winter Carnival and things like that'll be, there'll be pictures on the front. I know.
I
they
remember
will.
from last year.
Yeah.
Hey, when we do our annual bike fest, our Sunapee
Right.
Bike Fest,
We do that.
we had such great coverage
Yeah.
in the Compass. You guys did such a good job. It's a head injury event. We do it the third Saturday of every July, and it's just wonderful. And you did a wonderful job
Thanks.
covering it.
And back to the pictures, there's only so many pictures we can put in, so we also want people to know that there's whole galleries. Like when we do an event like that, we might have 100 pictures come in, but we can only put in 2 to 3 or something like that. in paper.
CompassNewspaper.com.
CompassPaper.com.
CompassPaper.com.
Close.
Compass
But
Fa-
that's
I'll
what
get
it is. So there's galleries in there. So there's additional
Nice.
sports photos. There's people will send us photos of just things going on, beautiful sunsets, and
Nice,
things over that way. So we'll have all that.
It's really awesome. Anything else to tell us before we let you go? Lee Johndrow, publisher of the Compass paper? Compasspaper.com.
Compasspaper. I think the biggest thing is that everybody has a piece and a part in the success of our communities. Whether it's a newspaper or a radio station or I work in a gas station.
Sure.
When we understand that everybody has a sphere of influence and we operate in that sphere of influence, we win the game. I think that's really where it is.
I think that's an important message to leave our viewers with, because you think about people who trudge out in the snow to open their gas station, to open their deli, to run their small business, whether it's a flower shop or a barber shop or a salon. I mean, they have choices. They don't have to be here in Newport if they don't want to, and yet they do to service us. And you're right, to really patronize them, to really support them. And that's what's happening in your paper week in, week out, isn't it?
That's it. So I think we just need to all recognize we have a sphere of influence and we need to operate in it.
Good. I like it. Perfect.
Thanks.
Lee Johndrow, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Glad you could come on board today. Live show right here at the 959 Studios. Do pick up a copy of the Compass newspaper. It's free. It's located all around Newport. It's got more information about the arts, entertainment, your religious church services.
The health section.
It's all in here, and it comes out every Thursday. You can pick it up during the day on Thursday, read it Friday, and the weekend. That's what I do. We have it. People come up to ski, and they pick it up and love it. Copy in the bathroom. It's really nice.
Thanks.
So. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Gordon Weinberger, your host on this week's edition of Newport's Life TV show. Again, right here at the 959 Studios at John Stark Highway. Make sure you have a great week, and we'll see you next week right here on Newport's Life Show.